Here's the problem. You've got a past tense regular verb and you don't know how to pronounce the ed at the end. What do? I'm going to show you how coming up. So, the ed on the end of a past tense verb can be pronounced one of three different ways. For example, how to pronounce these: grabbed, jumped, ticketed, landed. These are regular verbs that do not change their root when you make them past tense. Like jump becomes jumped, grab becomes grabbed, ticket becomes ticketed, land becomes landed. This distinguishes them from irregular verbs that morph into new words, like have becomes had, see becomes saw, go becomes went, hang becomes hung. Regular verbs are easy to make since we just add ed to the end, and sometimes we double the last letter, like when grab becomes grabbed. The problem is there are three different ways to pronounce the ed part. It can be pronounced d, as in grabbed. It can be pronounced t, as in jumped. Or it can be pronounced ed, as in ticketed or landed. Well, there are rules for which one is correct. And, like many rules in English, they are based on how something sounds, not how it is spelled. Here is where it is very important to know how to pronounce letters, to know what sound they actually make, and we are rarely taught this properly. For example, as a child, I remember my teacher making us recite this. A is for apple. A says A. B is for boy. B says B. C is for cat. C says K, and so on. That is wrong, very wrong. B does not say B. It really sounds like B. C can have many sounds like K, S, or maybe Ch, but never K. This is true for other languages too. When I took Chinese lessons, my teacher said B was pronounced bo, K was K, and P was po. Here is why that's important. Place your fingers on your throat, like this. Now say, grab. Can you feel the vibration? That means you are using your vocal cords to make the sound. Keep your fingers there and say, shh. You can't feel anything. That's because this is a breath sound, or what we call an aspirated sound. These two sounds, plus an exception, are the foundation, the basis for the rules I am teaching you today. If you do not pronounce these letters correctly, you will break the rules. This is one reason why it is so important to practice the basics of pronunciation. It not only makes you sound like a better speaker, there are rules of English based on correct pronunciation. As I said before, there are three different ways to pronounce the ed of a past tense regular verb. Rule 1 is for voice sounds like b, d, n. A voice sound will usually indicate that the ed is pronounced d. Rule 2 is for breath sounds like k, s, t, and p. A breath sound will usually indicate that the ed is pronounced t. Rule 3 is an exception for when the sound is d, as in Rule 1, or t, as in Rule 2. If either of these is true, then the ed is pronounced ed. But what sound am I talking about? Let's take land first. What is the last sound you make when you say that word? D. You can feel the vibration, right? So that would be Rule 1 for a voice sound. But if we apply Rule 1, which says the ed is pronounced d, then landed would be pronounced landed. Horrible. Same thing happens for ticket. The T is a breath sound, t, which tells us Rule 2 is correct. But again, if we apply Rule 2, we would say ticket, and that's just as bad. So this is why we have an exception, Rule 3. Rule 3 is, if the last sound matches Rule 1, d, or Rule 2, t, then you apply Rule 3. The ed is pronounced ed. Okay, let's go through those examples again, focusing on the actual steps in order to apply these rules. If the verb is grabbed, find the root of the verb, which is grab. Identify the last sound you make when you say the word, b. Does that sound like Rule 1, d, or Rule 2, t? No, it doesn't. Then, is it a voice or breath sound? B. I can feel the vibration. It's a voice sound. So apply Rule 1. The ed is pronounced d. If the verb is jumped, find the root of the verb, which is jump. Identify the last sound you make when you say the word, p. Does that sound like Rule 1, d, or Rule 2, t? No. Then, is it a voice or breath sound? P. No vibration. Breath. So, apply Rule 2. The ed is pronounced t. If the verb is landed, find the root of the verb, which is land. Identify the last sound you make when you say the word, d. Does that sound like Rule 1, d, or Rule 2, t? Yes, it sounds like Rule 1, d. That's an exception. So apply Rule 3. The ed is pronounced ed. If the verb is ticketed, find the root of the verb, which is ticket. Identify the last sound you make when you say the word, t. Does that sound like Rule 1, d, or Rule 2, t? Yes, that sounds like Rule 2, t. It's an exception. So apply Rule 3. The ed is pronounced ed. Be careful about certain situations. The letter C, for example, can be pronounced differently. Two common forms are s, as in ice, and k, as in lilac. Notice that the last letter in ice is E, but the E is silent. The last sound is the sibilant S, and that is what matters for this rule. What it sounds like and not how it is spelled. Letters like X have a complex sound. X starts with a k, but ends with an s. It would be Rule 2. Practice pronunciation of the basics, the individual letters. If you get that wrong, these rules won't work. Last, remember the flow. Find the root of the verb. That's the same thing as the present simple tense. Identify the last sound you make when you speak the verb. Does it sound like d or t? Yes, it is an exception. Apply Rule 3. No, then is it a voice or breath sound? If it's a voice sound, apply Rule 1. If it's a breath sound, apply Rule 2.